Admiral Kang Dae-ho stood in the command center on Earth, watching the large screen that showed the galaxy map. Red dots marked the places where worlds had fallen silent. Each red dot meant millions of people were gone. The dots spread across, the map like a disease. "Sir, we lost contact with the mining colony on Kepler 442b, said the young officer at the communication desk. His voice shook as he spoke. "That makes it 15 worlds in the past month." Kang Dae-ho closed his eyes for a moment. 15 worlds, 15 places where people had lived, worked, and raised families. Now they were empty. The aliens called themselves the Veltari Dominion. They moved through space like a storm, taking everything in their path. "Any survivors?" Kang Dae-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. "No, sir. Same as all the others. Complete silence after the first attack." The Admiral looked at the reports on his desk. Every world told the same story. The Veltari ships would arrive without warning. They would attack with weapons that seemed alive, like giant metal snakes, that could think and move on their own. The defending fleets would fight back with energy weapons and plasma cannons. For a few hours, it would look like they might win. Then the Veltari ships would change. They would grow new parts. They would learn how to block the energy weapons. Within a day, the defending ships would be destroyed or captured. The aliens would land on the planet and take everything. When they left, nothing remained but empty cities and dead ground. Far away from Earth, Captain Lee Boram walked through the halls of the battleship Indomitable. The ship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long. It carried the most powerful weapons that humans had ever built. But as she read the reports from the lost worlds, she wondered if it would be enough. "Captain," called Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min as he approached her in the hallway. "I've been looking at the enemy ship designs. These Veltari, they use biomechanical technology. Their ships can heal damage and change shape during battle." Lee Boram nodded. She had seen the recordings from the battles. The alien ships looked like they were part machine and part living creature. When human energy weapons hit them, they would grow new armor. When missiles exploded against their hulls, the holes would close up like wounds healing. "What do our scientists say about their weaknesses?" she asked. Yoon Tae-min shook his head. "That's the problem, Captain. Every species they've attacked used the same types of weapons. Energy beams, plasma cannons, ion blasters. The Veltari have learned to defend against all of them." They walked onto the bridge of the Indomitable. The bridge was a large room with screens showing space in all directions. Navigator Nam Soo-bin sat at her station, plotting courses through the star systems. Communications Officer Park Hye-jin monitored radio signals from across the galaxy, listening for any news from the outer colonies. "Captain," Park Hye-jin said as they entered, "I'm getting reports from the Procyon system. 3 more colonies have gone dark in the past 6 hours. Lee Boram felt a cold feeling in her stomach. The Procyon system was only 2 jumps away from Earth. The Veltari were getting closer to humanity's home world. "How long until they reach the inner systems?" she asked Nam Soo-bin. The navigator checked her calculations. "At their current speed, maybe 2 weeks. But, Captain, they're not just moving in a straight line. They're spreading out, taking multiple systems at once. It's like they're surrounding us." Weapons Specialist Han Ji-woo looked up from his station. "Captain, I've been thinking about something. Every report says the Veltari adapt to energy weapons. But what about kinetic weapons? Old-fashioned bullets and shells?" Lee Boram turned to him. "What do you mean?" "Well," Han Ji-woo said, pulling up a display on his screen. Humans still use kinetic weapons because they're simple and reliable. Magnetic railguns that fire solid metal slugs, chemical explosives, nuclear warheads. Most other species stopped using these weapons thousands of years ago. Yoon Taimin's eyes lit up. You think the Veltari might not be ready for weapons like that? It's possible, Han Ji-woo replied. Their biomechanical armor might be designed to absorb energy and redirect it. But a solid chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed, that's just pure kinetic force. You can't adapt to physics. Security Chief Lim Jae-sung had been listening from his position near the door. It makes sense, he said. Look at how they fight. They let the enemy shoot at them while they adapt. They're not used to enemies that can hurt them right away. Medical. Officer Kim So-ra joined the conversation. The reports from the battles mention something else, she said. The Veltari don't just destroy the defending fleets. They capture ships and absorb them into their own fleet. They're learning from every battle. Learning what? Lee Bo-ram asked. How each species fights, their tactics, their weapons, their technology. Every victory makes them stronger for the next battle. Park Hae-jin suddenly stood up at her station. Captain, I'm getting a priority message from Earth Command. The main screen changed to show Admiral Kang Dae-ho's face. He looked tired and worried. Captain Lee, the Admiral said, the situation has become critical. We're evacuating the outer colonies, but we need time. The Veltari fleet is larger than we thought. Our scouts count over 200 ships moving toward the inner systems. Lee Bo-ram felt her heart sink. 200 ships. The Indomitable was powerful, but it was still just one ship. Sir, what are our orders? She asked. Proceed to the Procyon system, Admiral Kang Dae-ho said. You'll meet up with the Alliance fleet there. Ships from 12 different species are gathering to make a stand. Understood, sir. The Admiral paused before continuing. Captain, I'm not going to lie to you. This might be humanity's last chance. If the Alliance fleet fails at Procyon, there's nothing between the Veltari and Earth except a few patrol ships. After the communication ended, the bridge was quiet. Everyone understood what they were facing. The Veltari had destroyed entire civilizations. They had weapons and technology that seemed impossible to defeat. And now humanity stood in their path. Navigator, Lee Bo-ram said finally. Set course for the Procyon system. Maximum speed. Aye, Captain, Nam Subin replied. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls. Course laid in. We'll arrive in 36 hours. Chief Engineer, the captain continued. I want every weapon system checked and double-checked. If Mr. Han is right about kinetic weapons, we need to be ready. Yes, Captain, Yoon Tae-min said. I'll have the railguns calibrated and all missile tubes loaded. As the Indomitable jumped to faster-than-light speed, Lee Bo-ram looked out at the stars. Somewhere, out there, the Veltari fleet was moving toward them. Somewhere behind them, Earth was preparing for the worst. She thought about the red dots on Admiral Kang's map. Each one represented a world that had thought it was safe. Each one had believed its defenses would be enough. All of them had been wrong. But humans were different. They had always been different. While other species had advanced beyond kinetic weapons, humans had kept them. While others relied on energy shields and plasma armor, humans still built thick metal hulls and redundant systems. Maybe that difference would be enough. Maybe the Veltari had never faced an enemy quite like humanity. Lee Bo-ram hoped they would find out soon. Communications Officer Park Hae-jin sat at her station on the bridge of the Indomitable, listening to the radio signals from across the galaxy. Most of what she heard was bad news. Distress calls from colonies under attack, emergency broadcasts from fleeing refugee ships, and then silence as another world fell to the Veltari. She adjusted her headset and tuned to the frequency used by the mining colony on Kepler 442b. For the past hour, she had been trying to reach them. The colony had over 50,000 people working in the asteroid mines. They were good people, hard workers who sent rare metals back to Earth to build ships like the Indomitable. Kepler 442b mining station. This is UES Indomitable. Please respond, she said into her microphone. She waited, listening to the static. Then suddenly, a voice came through the noise. Indomitable! Thank God! This is Director Choi at the mining station. We're under attack. Park Hye-jin quickly switched the signal to the main speakers so everyone on the bridge could hear. Director Choi, this is Communications Officer Park. What's your situation? The voice was filled with fear and panic. They came out of nowhere. Dozens of ships, like nothing I've ever seen. They look alive, Captain. The ships are moving like giant sea creatures. Captain Lee Bo-ram moved closer to Park Hye-jin's station. Director, this is Captain Lee. How many ships are attacking you? I count 37 enemy vessels. Our defense platforms are firing everything they have, but it's not working. The alien ships just absorb the energy blasts. When our plasma cannons hit them, they grow thicker armor. When our laser batteries target them, they develop reflective surfaces. Security Chief Lim Jae-sung shook his head. Same pattern as all the other attacks. Wait, Director Choi's voice continued. Something's happening. The alien ships are sending out some kind of tendrils. Long metal cables with devices on the end. They're trying to connect to our computer systems. Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min looked worried. They're trying to hack into the colony's network. That's how they learn about new technology. Director, Captain Lee said urgently, you need to shut down all your computer systems. Don't let them connect. We're trying, but the tendrils are cutting through our hull plating. They're forcing connections. I can see information flowing through the cables. They're downloading everything we know about human technology. Weapons Specialist Han Ji-woo stood up from his station. Captain, ask him about their weapons. I need to know what they're using against the colony. Director Choi, Captain Lee said. What weapons are the alien ships using against you? Energy. Beams of some kind. But not like any energy weapons I've seen. These beams seem to cut through matter at the molecular level. They're slicing our defense platforms apart like they're made of paper. Are they using any physical projectiles? Han Ji-woo asked. Any solid weapons? There was a pause. No, nothing like that. Just energy weapons and those connecting tendrils. Why? Han Ji-woo looked excited. Captain, this confirms my theory. They only use energy-based weapons because that's all they've ever needed. Every species they've fought uses energy weapons, so they've never had to develop defenses against physical projectiles. Navigator Nam Soo-bin turned from her station. Captain, we're still 18 hours away from Kepler 442b at maximum speed. Director Choi, Captain Lee said into the microphone. Help is coming, but we won't reach you in time. You need to evacuate immediately. We're trying, Captain, but they've surrounded us. Our evacuation ships can't get through their blockade. Wait, something's changed. The alien ships have stopped firing. What are they doing now? They're just floating there. The energy tendrils are still connected to our systems, but they're not attacking anymore. It's like they're studying us. Medical Officer Kim So-ra had been listening quietly. That's their pattern, she said. They stop fighting once they've learned everything they can. Then they move in to capture the survivors. Director, Captain Lee said, listen carefully. Do you have any kinetic weapons? Any old-fashioned guns or missiles? Well, yes. The mining equipment uses explosive charges to break up asteroids, and we have some emergency defense guns that fire solid shells. But those are ancient technology. No one uses weapons like that anymore. Use them, Han Ji-woo said urgently. Fire everything you have that shoots solid projectiles. But, sir, those weapons are useless against modern ships. Just do it, Captain Lee ordered. Fire all kinetic weapons at the alien ships. They waited, listening to the static. Then Director Choi's voice came back, filled with amazement. Incredible. The explosive charges are working. The alien ships can't adapt to the mining explosives. Their biomechanical armor is designed to absorb energy, but it can't handle physical impacts. We just destroyed 2 of their ships with asteroid mining charges. The bridge crew looked at each other with hope for the first time in weeks. Keep firing, Captain Lee said. Use every kinetic weapon you have. We are, Captain, but we don't have many. Most of our weapons are energy-based. We're down to our last few explosive charges. Director, Yoon Tae-min said, what about your industrial equipment? Mining lasers, cutting tools, anything that works differently from normal weapons? The plasma cutters work on a different frequency than our weapons. And we have some old nuclear charges for breaking up the biggest asteroids. Use everything, Captain Lee said. Anything that's not a standard energy weapon. For the next few minutes, they could hear the sounds of battle through the radio. Director Choi gave them updates as the mining colony fought back with their old equipment. The nuclear charges work best, he reported. The alien ships have no defense against nuclear explosions. We've destroyed 8 ships, but they're adapting. They're staying further away now. How many ships are left? Security Chief Lim asked. 29. But Captain, we're running out of kinetic weapons. The aliens are learning to keep their distance from anything that might explode. Park Hye-jin adjusted her headset as the signal began to fade. Director, your transmission is getting weak. They're jamming our communications now. Captain, I need to tell you something important before we lose contact. Go ahead. The Veltari ships are all connected. When one learns something, they all learn it. But there's something else. They have a command ship, bigger than the others. It stays in the center of their formation and doesn't fight directly. I think it's coordinating the entire fleet. A command ship, Captain Lee repeated. That's valuable information. Captain, they're breaking through our defenses. We can't hold them much longer. But you need to know, kinetic weapons work against them. They've never faced anything like human technology before. You might have a chance if you can hit them before they adapt. The signal was getting weaker. Director Choi's voice was barely audible through the static. Tell Earth. Tell them we held as long as we could, and Captain, make them pay for what they've done. The radio went silent. Park Hye-jin tried to re-establish contact, but there was no response. Kepler 442b mining station was gone, like all the others. But this time was different. This time they had learned something important. Mr. Han, Captain Lee said, how many kinetic weapons do we have on the Indomitable? Weapons specialist Han Ji-woo checked his systems. We have 12 railguns that fire solid metal slugs, 48 nuclear missiles, and about 200 conventional explosive warheads. Against 200 alien ships. That might not be enough, Navigator Nam Soo-bin said quietly. Maybe, Captain Lee replied. But Director Choi proved that kinetic weapons can hurt them, and if they have a command ship coordinating their fleet, maybe we don't need to destroy all 200 ships. Maybe we just need to cut off the head. Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min nodded. If we can identify and destroy their command ship, the rest of the fleet might lose coordination. That's assuming we can get close enough, Security Chief Lim said, and assuming the Alliance fleet at Procyon can help us. Captain Lee looked at the star map. The Procyon system was getting closer. Soon they would join the Alliance fleet and face the Veltari in battle. "Mr. Han," she said, "start modifying our kinetic weapons. I want every railgun loaded with the heaviest slugs we have, and prepare nuclear warheads for close-range deployment." "Yes, Captain." As the Indomitable continued toward Procyon, Park Hye-jin listened to the radio frequencies. She heard more distress calls from other colonies, more worlds falling silent. But now she also heard something else. Hope. Because humanity had something the Veltari had never encountered before. Simple, old-fashioned weapons that couldn't be adapted to or absorbed. Weapons that worked by the basic laws of physics rather than advanced energy manipulation. The Veltari had learned to defeat every energy weapon in the galaxy, but they had never faced a species that still believed in the power of a big metal slug moving very fast. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Procyon system. Captain Lee Boram expected to see a massive fleet of Allied ships preparing for battle. Instead, she saw debris floating in space and the scattered remains of what had once been a powerful alliance. "Captain," Navigator Nam Su-bin said, her voice filled with shock, "I'm detecting only 37 ships still operational. The Alliance fleet should have had over 300 vessels." "What happened here?" Security Chief Lim Jae-sung asked. As he studied the tactical display, Communications Officer Park Hye-jin was already working to contact the surviving ships. "I'm getting responses from 12 different species. Captain, they're saying the Veltari arrived 6 hours ago. The battle is already over." A new voice came through the ship's speakers. It was Admiral Zeph-Hai of the Koranian Republic, one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Zeph-Hai. You should not have come. Here. The Veltari fleet is beyond anything we imagined. They destroyed our main battle group in less than 2 hours." Captain Lee activated the communication system. "Admiral Zeph-Hai, this is Captain Lee Boram of the UES Indomitable. What's the current situation?" "Captain Lee, we came here with the largest fleet ever assembled. Ships from 12 worlds, armed with the most advanced weapons our civilizations could build. The Veltari adapted to everything we threw at them. Energy shields, plasma cannons, ion disruptors, quantum torpedoes. Nothing worked for more than a few minutes. Weapons specialist Han Ji-woo moved to the tactical station. "Captain, I'm scanning the debris field. Most of these ships were destroyed by their own weapons. The Veltari somehow turned their energy attacks back on them." "Admiral," Captain Lee said, "where's the Veltari fleet now?" "They withdrew to the outer system after the battle. Our scouts report they're processing the technology they captured from our ships." "Captain, you need to retreat immediately. One ship cannot stand against what defeated 300. Chief Engineer Yoon Taemin looked at the sensor readings. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the outer system. The Veltari fleet is enormous. I count 215 ships, and they're all larger than they were before the battle." "They're growing," Medical Officer Kim So-ra said quietly, "using the technology they captured to make themselves stronger." Captain Lee studied the tactical display. The Procyon system had 3 inhabited planets with a combined population of over 8 billion people. Behind them, Earth's evacuation fleets were trying to move civilians to safety. But the evacuation would take weeks to complete. "Admiral Zeph-Hai," she said, "how long before the Veltari move toward the inner systems?" "Our analysis suggests they'll resume their advance within 12 hours. Captain, there's nothing we can do to stop them. The surviving ships in my fleet are badly damaged. We're planning to retreat and warn our homeworlds." "Retreat?" Captain Lee said. What about the billions of people in this system? They will have to be evacuated or... Admiral Zephai's voice trailed off. Or abandoned, Captain Lee finished, like all the other worlds. The bridge was quiet as everyone realized what they were facing. The most powerful alliance, fleet in galactic history, had been destroyed in 2 hours. Now one human battleship was all that stood between the Veltari and the inner systems. "Captain," Navigator Nam Subin said, "Admiral Kang sent us updated orders while we were in transit. If the Alliance fleet fails, we're to retreat to Earth and help with the final defense." Captain Lee looked at the star map showing the Procyon system. 3 worlds full of people who trusted that someone would protect them. Behind those worlds, Earth was desperately trying to evacuate its population. "Mr. Nam," she said, "plot a course to the gravitational balance point between the outer system and the inner planets." "Captain?" Nam Subin looked confused. "That would put us directly in the path of the Veltari fleet." "Exactly." Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min stared at her. "Captain, you're not seriously thinking of engaging 200 ships with just the Indomitable?" "Mr. Yoon, how long would it take the evacuation fleets to clear Earth's population?" Yoon Tae-min checked his calculations. "At least 3 weeks, assuming everything goes perfectly. And how long before the Veltari reach Earth if we don't stop them here?" 10 days, maybe less. Captain Lee nodded. "Then we don't have a choice. We hold them here as long as possible." Security Chief Lim Jae-sung stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, this is suicide. We might delay them for a few hours at most." "Maybe," Captain Lee replied, "but Director Choi proved that kinetic weapons can hurt them. If we're creative and use our advantages, we might do more than just delay them." Weapons specialist Han Ji-woo was checking his systems. "Captain, I've finished. Modifying our kinetic weapons. Every railgun is loaded with depleted uranium slugs. Our nuclear missiles are armed and ready." "What about the conventional explosives?" she asked. "I've rigged them with proximity fuses. If the Veltari try to grab our ship with those biomechanical tendrils, they'll get a surprise." Communications. Officer Park Hee-jin looked up from her station. "Captain, Admiral Zephai is requesting to speak with you again." "Put him through." "Captain Lee," the alien admiral's voice sounded worried, "my sensors indicate you're moving toward the outer system. Please tell me you're not planning to attack the Veltari fleet alone. Admiral, humanity has a saying, someone has to make a stand. Today that someone is us." "Captain, this is madness. The Indomitable is a powerful ship, but it's still just one vessel against their entire fleet." "Maybe. But we have advantages they've never encountered before. Every species they've fought used energy weapons and advanced shields. They've never faced a ship designed around kinetic weapons and thick armor." Medical Officer Kim So-ra was preparing the medical bay for casualties. "Captain, what if they try to capture us instead of destroying us? They seem to prefer taking ships intact to study their technology." "Then they'll learn that humans don't surrender easily," Captain Lee replied. "Mr. Lim, prepare boarding defenses. If they try to take our ship, make them pay for every deck." "Understood, Captain." Admiral Zephai's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain Lee, I'm ordering my remaining ships to retreat. I cannot ask my crews to participate in a hopeless battle." "I understand, Admiral. Get your people to safety." "What about your crew? Don't they deserve the same chance?" Captain Lee looked around the bridge at her officers. Each of them had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not return. "Admiral, my crew knew the risks when we took this assignment. We're staying, As the Allied ships began jumping away to safety, the Indomitable continued toward the outer system. Captain Lee knew that in a few hours they would face the largest enemy fleet ever assembled. 200 ships that had conquered entire civilizations. "Captain," Navigator Nam Subin said, "we're approaching the balance point. Shall I hold position here?" "Yes. This is where we make our stand." The bridge crew worked quietly, making final preparations. Yun Tai-min rerouted power to the weapons and armor systems. Han Ji-woo ran diagnostics on every kinetic weapon. Park Hye-jin sent a message to Earth Command informing them of their position and intentions. "Captain, Communications Officer," Park said, "I'm getting a response from Admiral Kang on Earth." Admiral Kang's face appeared on the main screen. He looked older than he had just days before. "Captain Lee, I received your message. Are you certain about this course of action?" "Yes, sir. Someone needs to buy time for the evacuation fleets." "Captain, I'm not ordering you to do this. If you want to retreat to Earth, I'll understand." "Admiral, with respect, retreating won't save Earth. It will just mean the Veltari arrive a few days later with even more ships and technology. Our only chance is to hit them here before they get stronger." Admiral Kang was quiet for a moment. "Captain, if you're going to do this, do it right. Make them remember that they faced humanity." "We will, sir." The communication ended, and the bridge was quiet again. In the distance, sensors detected the Veltari fleet beginning to move. 200 ships, each one larger and more powerful than most space stations. "Captain," Security Chief Lim said, "the crew is ready. Everyone knows what we're facing, and everyone has chosen to stay." Captain Lee nodded. The Indomitable was alone. Now, one ship against an enemy that had never been defeated. But humanity had always faced impossible odds. From the first humans who looked up at the stars and decided to reach them, to the explorers who left Earth to find new worlds. Today, one human ship would show the galaxy that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. "All stations, prepare for battle," Captain Lee announced throughout the ship. "This is our line in the sand. Today we find out what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. The Veltari fleet was coming, and the Indomitable was waiting." The Veltari fleet approached like a living wall of biomechanical ships. Each vessel pulsed with organic light, their hulls shifting and changing as they moved through space. Captain Lee Bo-Ram watched them through the Indomitable's main view screen, counting 215 ships of various sizes, range to lead ships, 50,000 kilometers and closing, Navigator Nam Subin reported. "They're moving in a standard formation, but I've never seen anything like those ships before." The alien vessels looked like massive sea creatures crossed with advanced machines. Their hulls rippled like muscle tissue, while metal spines and weapon ports emerged and disappeared along their surfaces. The largest ship, positioned in the center of the formation, was nearly 5 kilometers long. "That must be their command ship," weapons specialist Han Ji-woo said. "It's staying protected in the middle of the fleet," Captain, Communications Officer Park Hye-jin said. "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead Veltari ship. It's not in any language I recognize, but the computer is trying to translate." "Put it through," Captain Lee ordered. A strange, harmonious voice filled the bridge. The words seemed to be spoken by multiple beings at the same time. "Unknown vessel, you are in the path of the Veltari Dominion. Submit for integration or be destroyed. Your technology will be absorbed. Your species will be catalogued. Resistance is futile." "Standard greeting," Security Chief Lim Jae-sung said grimly. "Same thing they probably said to every other species." Captain Lee activated the response channel. This is Captain Lee Bo Ram of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We do not submit to anyone. If you want this system, you'll have to go through us." There was a pause. Then the harmonious voice returned, sounding puzzled. "Your response is not expected. All species submit when faced with the Dominion's power. You will be made an example for others who might consider resistance." The lead Veltari ships began to spread out, surrounding the Indomitable from multiple directions. As they moved, Captain Lee could see their biomechanical nature more clearly. The ship's hulls breathed like living creatures, and weapon ports opened like mouths preparing to feed. "They're following the same pattern as before," Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min observed. "Surrounding us so we can't escape, then probing our defenses to learn how we fight." "Captain," Han Ji-woo said, "should I target the lead ships with our railguns?" "Not yet. Let them make the first move. I want to see how they react to our defenses, before we show them our weapons." The Veltari ships moved closer, now only 20,000 kilometers away. Suddenly, long tentacle-like cables emerged from several ships. The cables had strange devices at their ends, glowing with the same organic light as the ships themselves. "Biomechanical interface tendrils," Medical Officer Kim So-ra said. "They're trying to connect to our computer systems, just like at the mining colony." "They want to download our technology before they destroy us," Yoon Tae-min added. "It's how they've learned to defeat every other species." The tendrils stretched across space toward the Indomitable, moving with surprising speed. But as they approached the ship's hull, something unexpected happened. "Captain," Yoon Tae-min said with surprise, "our computer systems are actively fighting back. Dr. Choi's AI programming is working exactly as designed." Before the mission, Dr. Choi Min-ho had installed special AI systems throughout the Indomitable. Unlike the passive computer systems used by most species, these AI programs were designed to actively defend against intrusion attempts. "The AI is creating false data streams," Yoon Tae-min continued. "Instead of our real technology, it's feeding the Veltari fake information about our weapons and systems." On the main screen, they could see the interface tendrils trying to penetrate the ship's hull, but every time they made contact, sparks flew, and the tendrils pulled back as if they had been burned. "This is not expected," the Veltari voice said, now sounding confused. "Your systems resist integration. This has not occurred before." "Maybe that's because you've never tried to hack a human computer," Captain Lee replied. The Veltari ships seemed to pause as if they were communicating with each other. Then several ships began charging their energy weapons. Bright streams of coherent energy lanced out toward the Indomitable. "Energy weapons incoming," Navigator Nam Soo-bin announced. "Multiple targets." The beams struck the Indomitable's armor, plating. But the ship was built differently than the vessels the Veltari had faced before. Instead of energy shields that could be adapted to, humans used thick layers of metal and ceramic armor. "Minimal damage to outer hull," Yoon Tae-min reported. "The energy beams are designed to overload shields and electronic systems. They're not very effective against solid armor." "Now it's our turn," Captain Lee said. "Mr. Han, target the closest ships with railguns. Let's see how they handle kinetic weapons." "Aye, Captain. Targeting lead vessel. Railgun 1 loaded and ready." Fire. The railgun launched a depleted uranium slug at a significant fraction of light speed. The metal projectile crossed the distance between ships in seconds and struck the Veltari vessel's hull. The effect was immediate and devastating. The biomechanical armor that had easily absorbed energy weapons was torn apart by the solid projectile. The alien ship's hull rippled and convulsed as it tried to heal the damage. But a railgun slug was different from energy weapons. It created a physical hole that couldn't be adapted to or absorbed. Direct hit, Han Ji-woo reported. The target ship is badly damaged. Its biomechanical systems are trying to repair the hull, but they can't handle kinetic damage. The Veltari voice returned, now filled with something that sounded like surprise. This is not expected. Your weapons use primitive kinetic force. This technology was abandoned by advanced species millennia ago. Just because something is old doesn't mean. It doesn't work, Captain Lee replied. Fire all railguns, target different ships. 12 railguns fired simultaneously, sending uranium slugs toward different Veltari vessels. The alien ships tried to maneuver out of the way, but they were used to dodging energy beams that traveled at light speed. Solid projectiles were slower but much harder to avoid when fired from close range. 6 slugs found their targets, punching through biomechanical hulls and causing massive damage. 2 Veltari ships lost power and began drifting. Another ship's hull ruptured completely, venting atmosphere and biomechanical fluid into space. Impossible, the Veltari voice said. Your primitive weapons should not be effective against advanced biomechanical armor. That's your problem, Security Chief Lim said with satisfaction. You've gotten so advanced that you forgot the basics. The surviving Veltari ships began to change. Their hulls thickened and hardened, developing what looked like additional armor plating. They were adapting to the kinetic weapons, just as they had adapted to energy weapons in previous battles. They're learning, Medical Officer Kim observed. Growing thicker armor to protect against our railguns. Mr. Han, Captain Lee said, load nuclear missiles. If they want to play the adaptation game, let's give them something really interesting to adapt to. Nuclear missiles armed and ready, Captain. Fire 2 missiles at the ships with the thickest armor. Let's see how they handle nuclear explosions. The missiles launched from the Indomitable and streaked toward their targets. The Veltari ships tried to intercept them with energy beams, but the missiles were designed to withstand such attacks. They detonated against the alien hulls in brilliant flashes of nuclear fire. The explosions tore through the thickened biomechanical armor like it was paper. Nuclear weapons didn't just deliver kinetic force. They released massive amounts of energy and radiation that overwhelmed the aliens' adaptive systems. 2 ships destroyed, Han Ji-woo reported. The nuclear explosions caused complete hull failure, but the Veltari were learning. The remaining ships began spreading out, putting more distance between themselves and the Indomitable. They were also changing again, developing what looked like energy dispersal systems across their hulls. They're adapting to nuclear weapons now, Yoon Tae-min said. But it's taking them longer than it did with energy weapons. They've never faced anything like this before. More Veltari ships were arriving from the outer system. The initial attack, group of 20 ships, was being reinforced by larger vessels, but several of the reinforcing ships were carrying something new, smaller vessels that looked like living fighter craft. Captain, Park Hae-jin said, I'm detecting multiple small craft launching from the Veltari ships. They're heading directly for us. Boarding craft, Security Chief Lim said. They're going to try to take our ship by force. Mr. Lim, prepare all boarding defenses. If they want to come aboard, make sure they regret it. Already on it, Captain. I've got security teams positioned at every airlock and potential breach point. The small Veltari craft moved through space like living things, twisting and turning to avoid the Indomitable's defensive fire. Some were destroyed by the ship's point defense systems, but others managed to attach themselves to the hull. Hull breaches on deck 7, 12, and 15, Yoon Tae-min reported. The boarding craft are cutting through our armor. This is where we find out if humans are as tough as our ships, Captain Lee said. Throughout the Indomitable, security, Teams prepared to face an enemy that had conquered dozens of species. But humans had one advantage that the first Veltari boarders cut through the hull of Deck 7 and immediately found themselves in a nightmare they had never experienced before. Security Chief Lim Jae-sung had prepared for this moment since they first learned about the alien invasion tactics. The boarding party consisted of 12 biomechanical creatures that looked like a cross between insects and machines. They moved with perfect coordination, communicating through some kind of mental link. Each creature carried energy weapons that had been adapted from the technology of conquered species. They expected to face defenders using similar energy weapons in organized formations. Instead, they walked into a hallway filled with chemical explosive charges that Lim had personally rigged. The explosion tore through the alien boarders before they could adapt their armor. The Veltari creatures had biomechanical systems that could quickly adjust to energy attacks, but they had never faced simple chemical explosives detonating in an enclosed space. Deck 7 secure, Lim reported to the bridge. 12 hostiles. Eliminated. How? Came the confused response from the Veltari ships. Your defensive systems are primitive. They should not be effective against adapted bioforms. Captain Lee Boram smiled grimly. You're about to learn that humans have been fighting wars for a very long time. We know a few tricks. On Deck 12, another boarding party found themselves facing a different surprise. The human defenders weren't using formation tactics or energy weapons. Instead, they were using what military historians called asymmetric warfare. Crewman Kim Dong-soo had taken position behind an overturned table in the corridor. When the alien boarders rounded the corner, he opened fire with a kinetic rifle that shot old-fashioned metal bullets. The biomechanical creatures tried to adapt their armor to the gunfire, but bullets worked differently than energy beams. While the aliens were adapting to the rifle fire, Engineer Park Sun-mi crawled through a maintenance shaft and dropped chemical grenades behind their position. The Veltari boarders found themselves caught between gunfire from the front and explosions from behind. Deck 12 holding, came the report. 8 hostiles down, working on the rest. This is not expected, the Veltari voice said over the communications. Your defenders do not follow standard tactical patterns. They fight without coordination or logical formation. That's because humans don't fight like other species, Captain Lee replied. We improvise. The space battle continued around the Indomitable, while the boarding actions raged inside. Chief Engineer Yoon Taemin was rerouting power systems in ways that shouldn't have been possible, giving maximum energy to weapons while keeping life support running. Mr. Yoon, Captain Lee said, can you give me more power to the railguns? I can, but I'll have to shut down the gravity generators in non-essential areas, Yoon replied. Do it. Within seconds, several decks of the ship lost artificial gravity. But this turned out to be another advantage for the human defenders. The Veltari boarders were used to fighting in standard gravity conditions. Suddenly, finding themselves floating in zero gravity disrupted their coordination. Security Chief Lim used this to his advantage on Deck 15. When the alien boarders found themselves floating helplessly, his security teams used magnetic boots to move along the walls and attack from unexpected directions. The gravity loss is actually helping us, Lim reported. The aliens can't adapt to zero gravity as quickly as they adapt to weapons. Excellent. Keep using every advantage we have. Weapons specialist Han Ji-woo was having his own success in the space battle. The Veltari ships were still trying to surround the Indomitable, but their tactics were based on fighting enemies that used predictable energy weapons. Captain, Han said, I'm going to try something unconventional. Instead of targeting their ships, I'm going to target the space between them. What do you mean? Watch this. Han fired a nuclear missile, not at a Veltari ship, but at an empty point in space, where several ships would pass. When the weapon detonated, the nuclear explosion created a massive electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the biomechanical coordination between ships. Brilliant, Navigator Nam Subin said. The EMP is interfering with their hive mind communications. For the first time since the battle began, the Veltari ships seemed confused. They began firing at each other by mistake, their coordination broken by the electromagnetic interference. "This is not expected," the alien voice said, now sounding frustrated. "Your tactics are chaotic and unpredictable. Our combat algorithms cannot compute optimal responses." "That's the point," Captain Lee said. "Human warfare isn't about algorithms. It's about creativity and adaptation." Communications Officer Park Hae-jin was monitoring enemy transmissions when she noticed something important. "Captain, the Veltari are having trouble coordinating their fleet. Their command ship is sending constant signals trying to re-establish control." "The command ship," Captain Lee said. "Mr. Han, can you target it?" "It's heavily protected in the center of their formation. But if we can get closer..." "Do it. Plot a course directly toward their command ship." "Captain," Medical Officer Kim Sora said, "that will put us in the middle of their entire fleet." "I know. But sometimes the best defense is a good offense." Navigator Nam Subin looked worried. "Captain, that's tactically insane. No military computer would recommend that course of action." "Good thing we're not computers," Captain Lee replied. "Plot the course." The Indomitable began moving directly toward the center of the Veltari formation. The alien ships tried to intercept, but Captain Lee had given them too many surprises to adapt to quickly. Some ships were still recovering from EMP damage. Others were trying to adapt to kinetic weapons while also dealing with boarding parties that fought like no enemy they had ever faced. "This is not expected," the Veltari voice said. "Your ship is moving toward certain destruction. This behavior is not logical." "Logic is overrated," Captain Lee said. "Mr. Han, prepare our biggest nuclear warhead. Target the command ship." "Captain," Chief Engineer Yoon said, "I can give you one massive power surge to the railguns, but it will overload our power systems. We'll be dead in space afterward." "How massive?" "Big enough to punch through anything they can throw at us." "Do it." As the Indomitable raced toward the Veltari command ship, the battle reached its climax. The alien vessels fired everything they had at the human battleship, but their weapons were designed to overload energy shields. Against thick metal armor, they were much less effective. The human ship took damage, but kept moving. Fires broke out on several decks, but damage control. Teams put them out while continuing to fight off boarders. The artificial gravity failed in more sections, but the crew adapted by using magnetic equipment and safety lines. "This is impossible," the Veltari voice said. "Your ship should have been destroyed. Your crew should have surrendered." "You don't understand humans," Security Chief Lim said as he personally threw an alien boarder out of an airlock. "We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten." The Indomitable was now close enough to see the Veltari command ship clearly. It was enormous, covered in biomechanical sensors and communication arrays. Clearly, it was the brain of the entire fleet. "Target acquired," Han Ji-woo reported. "Nuclear warhead loaded. Railguns charged for maximum power shot." "Mr. Yoon, are you ready with that power surge?" "Ready, Captain. But remember, after this shot we'll be powerless. One shot is all we need. Mr. Han, fire everything." The railguns fired their most powerful shot ever, sending a depleted uranium slug enhanced by the power surge directly at the command ship. At the same time, the nuclear warhead detonated against the alien vessel's hull. The combination of kinetic force and nuclear explosion overwhelmed the command ship's biomechanical defenses. The massive vessel's hull cracked and split, venting atmosphere and biomechanical fluid into space. "Direct hit," Han reported. "Command ship is breaking apart." Immediately, the effect spread throughout the Veltari fleet, without their command. Ship coordinating them, the biomechanical vessels began acting independently. Some continued attacking, others tried to retreat, and several began firing at each other. "Their coordination is completely broken," Park Hya-jin reported. "I'm detecting massive communication failures throughout their fleet." "This is not expected," the Veltari voice said, but now it came from multiple sources. "Command integration has failed. Fleet cohesion is compromised. The Indomitable drifted powerless in space, surrounded by confused alien ships. But the Veltari were no longer acting as a unified force. Their hive mind advantage had been shattered by the destruction of their command ship." "Captain," Communications Officer Park said, "I'm receiving transmissions from the outer system. More human ships are arriving. It's Admiral Kang with the Second Fleet." "About time," Captain Lee said with relief. As Earth's reinforcements arrived, to find the Veltari fleet in disarray, Captain Lee realized they had discovered something important. The aliens' greatest strength, their ability to coordinate and adapt as a unified force, was also their greatest weakness. Cut off the head, and the body would stop working. And humans, as it turned out, were very good at finding the head and cutting it off. Admiral Kang Daeho's Second Fleet arrived in the Procyon system to find something they had never expected to see: a Veltari fleet in complete chaos. The alien ships were scattered across the system, some fighting each other, others retreating, and many simply drifting without purpose. "Report from the Indomitable," Communications Officer Lee Sung-min said from the bridge of the flagship Sovereign. "Captain Lee Bo-ram confirms destruction of the Veltari command ship. Enemy fleet coordination has collapsed." Admiral Kang looked at the tactical display showing dozens of Veltari ships acting independently. Incredible. One ship managed to break their entire fleet structure. But even as he watched, the alien vessels were beginning to adapt. New command ships emerged from the larger vessels, sending out coordination signals to nearby ships. The Veltari were trying to rebuild their command structure. "Sir," Captain Yoon Jae-hyun of the destroyer Relentless reported, "the aliens are forming smaller groups. They're adapting to the loss of central command." "Then we adapt faster," Admiral Kang replied. "All ships engage immediately. Don't give them time to reorganize." The Second Fleet consisted of 18 ships, all armed with kinetic weapons based on the Indomitable's success. But the Veltari had learned from their first encounter with human weapons. As the fleet engaged, the alien ships displayed thicker armor and new defensive systems. "They're adapting to kinetic weapons," reported Captain Kim Min-jun from the cruiser Defiance. "Their armor is getting stronger." Dr. Choi Min-ho, who had transferred to the Sovereign to oversee the AI systems, was monitoring the battle from the science station. "Admiral, the Veltari adaptation follows predictable patterns. They encounter a threat, analyze it, then develop countermeasures. But they need time to fully adapt." "How much time?" Admiral Kang asked. "Based on their previous battles, approximately 20 minutes for basic adaptation, 2 hours for complete immunity. Then we have 20 minutes to hit them with everything we have before they become immune to kinetic weapons." The human fleet attacked with coordinated fury, Railguns fired continuously, sending streams of metal slugs into the Veltari formation. Nuclear missiles detonated against alien hulls, creating massive explosions that lit up the system. But the aliens were learning fast. Their biomechanical armor grew thicker and more sophisticated with each hit. Energy dispersal systems spread across their hulls, designed to absorb and redirect the force of kinetic impacts. "Admiral," Captain Park Bo-young from the frigate Vengeance reported, "my railgun shots are becoming less effective. The aliens are developing kinetic-resistant armor." "Same here," added Captain Nam Hyun-woo from the destroyer Thunderbolt. "They're adapting faster than we expected." Dr. Choi studied the sensor readings from the battle. "Admiral, I'm detecting something interesting. The Veltari adaptation process requires massive amounts of energy. They're drawing power from their weapons and propulsion systems to fuel their armor changes." "Are you saying they become weaker in other areas when they adapt?" "Exactly. When they strengthen their armor against kinetic weapons, they reduce power to their energy weapons and movement systems." Admiral Kang smiled. "Then we give them so many different threats that they can't adapt to all of them at once. All ships, switch to mixed weapon systems. Use chemical explosives, electromagnetic pulses, and even ramming attacks if necessary." The human fleet began employing tactics that no other species had ever used against the Veltari. Ships launched. Clouds of metal debris that acted like massive shotgun blasts. Others fired weapons that released chemical acids designed to eat through biomechanical tissue. Captain Lim So-jin from the cruiser Intrepid reported an unexpected success. "Admiral, I tried something unusual. Instead of targeting their ships, I fired railgun slugs at their weapon ports just as they were charging up. The kinetic impact disrupted their energy buildup and caused internal explosions." "Excellent work, Captain. All ships, target their weapons during charge-up cycles." The Veltari found themselves facing threats they had never encountered. When they adapted their armor to resist kinetic weapons, the humans switched to acid attacks. When they developed resistance to chemical weapons, the humans used electromagnetic pulses. When they shielded against EMP, the humans rammed them with unmanned missiles. "This is not expected," came the confused transmissions from multiple Veltari ships. "Human tactical patterns are chaotic and unpredictable. Adaptation algorithms cannot process random warfare." But the aliens were still learning. New types of ships began emerging from the larger vessels, specialized forms designed to counter specific human weapons. Some ships developed multiple types of armor that could switch between configurations. Others created energy fields that could deflect both kinetic and energy attacks. "They're getting smarter," Captain Kim warned. "These new ships are adapting to multiple weapon types simultaneously." Dr. Choi was working frantically at his station. "Admiral, I have an idea. The Veltari adaptation process is based on analyzing successful attacks. What if we show them fake attacks?" "What do you mean?" "Our AI systems can generate false sensor readings. We can make them think we're using weapons that don't actually exist. While they're adapting to imaginary threats, we hit them with real ones." "Do it." Within minutes, the human ships began broadcasting false sensor signatures. The Veltari detected what appeared to be new types of quantum weapons, temporal disruptors, and dimensional phase cannons. None of these weapons actually existed, but the alien ships began adapting their defenses anyway. While the Veltari wasted energy adapting to fake threats, the human fleet hit them with conventional kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. The aliens, found themselves completely off balance, adapting to the wrong threats while taking real damage. Brilliant, Admiral Kang said as he watched Veltari ships struggle to counter weapons that didn't exist. They're so focused on adaptation that they can't tell real threats from fake ones. But the aliens were beginning to catch on. The more advanced Veltari ships started developing sensor systems that could distinguish between real and fake weapon signatures. They began ignoring the false threats and focusing on actual attacks. "Sir," Captain Yoon reported, "the larger alien ships are adapting to our deception tactics. They're no longer falling for the fake weapon signatures." "Then we need to be more creative," Admiral Kang replied. "Dr. Choi, what else can we do?" The scientist was studying the battle data when he noticed something unusual. "Admiral, look at this. The Veltari ships are all connected through biomechanical networks. When one ship learns something, it shares that information with nearby ships. That's how they coordinate so effectively." "Yes, but it's also a weakness. If we can hack into their network, we might be able to feed them false information directly." "Can our AI systems do that?" "The AI I designed for the Indomitable was specifically programmed to fight back against biomechanical intrusion. I think I can reverse that process and intrude on their systems instead." Admiral Kang made the decision quickly. "Do it. Upload your AI to the entire fleet. Let's see how the Veltari handle a computer virus." Dr. Choi's AI spread through the human fleet's computer systems and began attempting to connect to nearby Veltari ships. The alien vessels tried to resist the intrusion, but their biomechanical networks were designed to accept information from other Veltari ships. They weren't prepared for an active AI attack. "It's working," Dr. Choi reported excitedly. "The AI is infiltrating their network. I can see their internal communications. What are they saying?" "They're confused. The AI is feeding them contradictory information about human weapons and tactics. Some ships think we have weapons that can destroy planets. Others believe we can teleport through solid matter." The effect on the Veltari fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships began adapting to threats that didn't exist while ignoring real attacks. Some vessels developed armor against imaginary weapons while leaving themselves vulnerable to actual railgun fire. "This is not expected," Kane panicked. "Transmissions from the alien fleet. Data corruption detected. Human information warfare exceeds all known parameters." The battle began turning decisively in humanity's favor. The Veltari ships, confused by false information and unable to coordinate effectively, started making critical mistakes. Some ships fled the battle entirely. Others continued fighting but with completely inappropriate weapons and tactics. "Admiral," Captain Park reported, "multiple alien ships are requesting to surrender. They're saying they've never encountered information warfare before." Admiral Kang looked at the tactical display. What had started as a battle against 200 superior ships had become a rout. The Veltari were retreating in disorder, their adaptation advantage turned against them by human creativity and AI warfare. "Accept their surrender," he ordered, "but keep our weapons ready." This might be another adaptation. As the first Veltari ships powered down their weapons and requested asylum, Admiral Kang realized that humanity had discovered something unprecedented. The aliens could adapt to any weapon or tactic, but they couldn't adapt to chaos itself. Human warfare wasn't about superior technology or perfect coordination. It was about being unpredictable, creative, and willing to try anything that might work. And against an enemy that relied on logic and adaptation, pure human chow. The battle in the Procyon system had been raging for 6 hours when Security Chief Lim Jae-sung made a decision that would change everything. As he watched more Veltari boarding craft attached to the hull of the Indomitable, he realized that defense wasn't enough. They needed to go on the attack. "Captain," he said over the communication system while fighting off alien boarders on Deck 9, "I need permission to lead a boarding party against one of their ships." Captain Lee Boram, coordinating the space battle from the damaged bridge, looked at him through the screen. "Mr. Lim, that's suicide. We don't know anything about the inside of their ships." "That's exactly why we need to do it," Lim replied, ducking as an energy beam passed over his head. "The Veltari learn by studying our technology and tactics, but they've never had anyone study them. If I can get aboard one of their ships, maybe I can learn something useful. What if their ships are filled with deadly atmosphere or radiation? Then, I'll wear a full environmental suit. Captain, we're fighting a defensive battle against an enemy that adapts to everything we do. We need to take the initiative." Captain Lee thought for a moment. Around them, the battle continued as human ships fought desperately against Veltari vessels that were becoming harder to damage with each passing hour. "Do it," she said finally. "Take a small team. But Mr. Lim, if you find yourself in serious trouble, get out immediately." "Understood, Captain." Lim gathered 4 of his best security officers and equipped them with full environmental suits, kinetic weapons, and enough explosives to level a small building. Their target was a medium-sized Veltari ship that had been damaged by railgun fire but was still operational. The boarding craft they used was a small, fast vessel designed for emergency evacuation. Lim had modified it with cutting tools and magnetic clamps. As they approached the alien ship, he could see its biomechanical hull pulsing like a living heartbeat. "Remember," he told his team as they prepared to board, "these ships are partially alive. Don't trust anything you see. And if something looks like it might be important, plant explosives on it." The boarding craft clamped onto the Veltari ship's hull and began cutting through the biomechanical armor. The alien material tried to resist, growing thicker as the cutting beam worked, but eventually they broke through into the ship's interior. What they found inside was unlike anything in human experience. The corridors were lined with a substance that looked like a cross between metal and living tissue. Lights pulsed along the walls in rhythm with the ship's heartbeat. The air was breathable but had a strange, organic smell. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered Officer Kim Tae-ho as they moved down the corridor. "Stay focused," Lim replied. "We're looking for anything that might be a control center or communication hub." They moved deeper into the ship, following corridors that seemed to change shape as they walked. The biomechanical walls would shift and flow, creating new passages or blocking old ones. It was as if the ship itself was trying to guide them somewhere. "Sir," Officer Park Jin-woo said, "I think the ship is herding us towards something. These corridor changes aren't random." "I know. Stay alert. It might be leading us into a trap." But as they continued, Lim began to suspect the ship wasn't trying to trap them. It was trying to show them something. The corridors kept leading them toward the center of the vessel, where they found a large chamber filled with strange, organic machinery. In the center of the chamber was a pulsing mass of biomechanical tissue connected to thousands of thin cables that ran throughout the ship. It looked like a giant brain crossed with a computer system. "That's it," Lim said with sudden understanding. "That's their control center. The entire ship is controlled by that biomechanical brain." Officer Lee Sung-ho raised his rifle. "Should we destroy it?" "Not yet. First, let me try something." Lim approached the central mass carefully. As he got closer, he could see that the biomechanical brain was connected to communication arrays throughout the ship. More importantly, he could see that it was connected to similar systems on other Veltari ships. This is how they coordinate, he realized. All the ships are connected through these biomechanical brains. They share information instantly through some kind of organic network. He activated his communication system to contact the Indomitable. "Captain, this is Lim. I found something important. The Veltari ships are all connected through biomechanical brains. They share information through an organic network." "Can you disrupt it?" Captain Lee asked. "Maybe, but I have a better idea. What if instead of destroying this brain, we try to hack it?" There was a pause. "Mr. Lim, we don't have the technology to interface with alien biomechanical systems." "Actually, we might. Dr. Choi's AI was designed to fight back against biomechanical intrusion. If I can connect our AI to this brain, it might be able to infiltrate their entire network. That's extremely dangerous. If the AI gets trapped in their system, we could lose it entirely. Captain, this could be our chance to turn their own coordination system against them. The Veltari's greatest strength is their ability to share information instantly. But that also means if we can corrupt their information, we can confuse their entire fleet." Captain Lee made the decision quickly. "Do it. But be ready to cut the connection if things go wrong." Lim connected his suit's computer system to one of the cables leading to the biomechanical brain. Immediately, his screens filled with strange symbols and organic data patterns. The AI that Dr. Choi had designed began analyzing the alien information systems. "It's working," Lim reported. "The AI is learning how to communicate with their biomechanical network. I can see data flowing between ships." But as the AI integrated deeper into the Veltari network, something unexpected happened. Instead of just sending false information, it began learning the aliens' real capabilities and weaknesses. "Captain," Lim said with growing excitement, "the AI isn't just hacking their system. It's downloading their entire database. I'm getting information about their technology, their tactics, everything." "What are you learning?" "The Veltari aren't just one species. They're a collection of dozens of species that were absorbed into their collective consciousness. Each conquered civilization added its knowledge to their network." As Lim watched the data flow through his systems, he began to understand the true nature of the Veltari dominion. They weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were collectors, absorbing the knowledge and technology of every species they encountered. That's how they adapt so quickly, he realized. They have the combined knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. When they encounter a new weapon, they compare it to everything they've learned before and find a countermeasure. Then how are we defeating them? Because humans are the first species they've encountered that doesn't follow logical patterns. Every other civilization they've absorbed was predictable. They used energy weapons, fought in formations, followed military doctrine. But humans improvise. We use chaos as a weapon. The AI continued downloading information from the Veltari network when suddenly alarms began sounding throughout the alien ship. The biomechanical brain started pulsing more rapidly, and the cables connected to it began glowing brighter. "Sir," Officer Kim said urgently, "something's happening. The ship's systems are going crazy." Lim looked at his computer display and saw the problem. The AI wasn't just downloading information from the Veltari network. It was uploading human chaos back into their system. The orderly, logical biomechanical network was being corrupted by human unpredictability. The AI is giving them too much information, Lim realized. It's showing them human tactical databases, but the Veltari minds can't process chaos. Their biomechanical brains are designed for order and logic. Throughout the alien ship, systems began failing as the biomechanical brain tried to adapt to human tactical patterns that made no logical sense. The Veltari network was experiencing something like a nervous breakdown as it tried to comprehend a species that used confusion as a strategy. "Captain," Lim reported, "the AI is causing a cascade failure in their network. The Veltari minds can't handle human chaos. Their biomechanical brains are overloading. Get out of there, Mr. Lim! Now!" Lim and his team ran back through the corridors as the alien ship convulsed around them. The biomechanical walls were shifting chaotically, no longer able to maintain their shape. Emergency lights flashed as the ship's systems failed one by one. They reached their boarding craft just as the Veltari ship's biomechanical brain completely shut down. As they undocked and returned to the Indomitable, Lim could see the effects spreading to other ships in the alien fleet. "Captain," he reported as they landed in the Indomitable's shuttle bay, "the cascade failure is spreading through their network. The Veltari ships are losing coordination again, but this time it's permanent. Their biomechanical brains can't process human chaos." Captain Lee smiled as she watched enemy ships throughout the system begin drifting powerless in space. "Mr. Lim, I think you just discovered how to defeat the Veltari permanently." "Yes, Captain. We don't beat them with superior weapons or tactics. We beat them by being human." As the alien fleet collapsed in confusion, unable to process the chaotic nature of human warfare, Lim realized they had found the ultimate weapon against any enemy that relied on logic and adapt. 3 days after the battle in the Procyon system, Captain Lee Boram stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking out at what remained of the once mighty Veltari fleet. Dozens of biomechanical ships drifted powerless in space, their crews either dead or in some kind of catatonic state. The human fleet had suffered losses too. 7 ships had been destroyed, and many others were badly damaged. But they had accomplished something that no other species in galactic history had managed. They had completely defeated the Veltari Dominion. "Captain, Communications Officer," Park Hyojin said as she approached, "I'm receiving reports from across 3 galactic sectors. Veltari fleets everywhere are surrendering or abandoning their positions." Captain Lee turned from the window. "All of them?" "Yes, Captain. The cascade failure that Security Chief Lim caused has spread through their entire network. Without their biomechanical coordination system, they can't function as a unified force. The victory had come at a cost that was still being calculated. The Indomitable itself was barely spaceworthy. Hull breaches on 7 decks had been sealed with emergency patches. The main engine was running at 30% capacity. Half the railguns were destroyed, and the ship's artificial gravity worked only in essential areas. But they had won. Chief Engineer Yoon Tae-min joined them at the observation window. His uniform was torn and stained with grease from 3 days of nonstop repairs. "Captain, I've got preliminary damage reports from the fleet. It's going to take months to repair everything, but all our ships are capable of making it back to Earth." "What about the Veltari ships?" Captain Lee asked. "That's the interesting part. Their biomechanical systems are so integrated that when the network crashed, their entire technology base shut down. The ships are basically dead hulks now." Medical Officer Kim So-ra approached with her own report. "Captain, I've been studying the alien crew members we recovered from the disabled ships. They're not dead, but they're not exactly alive either. It's like they're in some kind of mental shock. Can they recover? I don't know. The Veltari weren't just connected to their ships through technology. They were connected mentally and emotionally. When that connection was severed, it seems to have damaged their consciousness. Dr. Choi Min-ho had been working around the clock to understand what had happened to the alien network. He joined the group at the observation window carrying a data pad filled with his analysis. "Captain," he said, "I've been studying the AI's interaction with the Veltari system. What we did was more than just a computer hack. We introduced chaos into a system that was designed for perfect order." "Explain that," Captain Lee said. The Veltari consciousness was based on collective thinking. Every individual was connected to every other individual through their biomechanical network. They shared thoughts, memories, and experiences instantly. It made them incredibly efficient and allowed them to adapt quickly to new threats. But it also made them vulnerable, Security Chief Lim Jae-sung said as he joined the group. He was still wearing his damaged armor from the boarding action that had started the cascade failure. "Exactly," Dr. Choi continued. "When our AI introduced human tactical thinking into their network, their collective consciousness couldn't process it. Human warfare is based on individual creativity, unpredictable decisions, and chaotic adaptation. The Veltari minds were designed for logical, orderly thinking." "So what happened to them?" Captain Lee asked. "The best analogy I can think of is that we gave them a mental breakdown. Their biomechanical brains couldn't handle the contradiction between order and chaos. The network shut down to protect itself, but that left all the individual Veltari disconnected from the collective consciousness they had relied on for thousands of years." Weapons specialist Han Ji-woo had been quietly listening to the conversation. "Does this mean they're no longer a threat?" "Not in the way they were before," Dr. Choi replied. "Without their network, they can't coordinate large-scale operations. They can't share technology instantly or adapt as quickly to new threats. Essentially, we've reduced them from a galactic superpower to scattered groups of individual ships." Navigator Nam Subin had been monitoring communications from throughout the galaxy. "Captain, I'm getting reports from the outer colonies. Veltari fleets that had been occupying conquered worlds are abandoning their positions. Some are retreating to unknown space, others are just sitting there, doing nothing." Admiral Kang Dae-ho's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Captain Lee, please report to the briefing room. We need to discuss the situation throughout the galaxy." The senior officers made their way to the briefing room, which had been partially repaired since the battle. Admiral Kang appeared on the main screen, calling from his flagship in Earth orbit. "Captain Lee, congratulations on an impossible victory," the Admiral began. "Earth Command has been analyzing the reports from across the galaxy. The Veltari Dominion has effectively collapsed." "What's the current situation, sir?" Captain Lee asked. "We're receiving surrender requests from Veltari forces in over 40 star systems. Most of their fleets have simply powered down and are drifting in space. A few groups are trying to retreat to their home territory, but without coordination, they're not much of a threat." "Are the conquered worlds safe?" "That's where things get complicated. The Veltari had absorbed the populations of dozens of worlds into their collective consciousness. With the network down, we don't know what happened to those people." Dr. Choi looked troubled. "Admiral, if the absorbed populations were as dependent on the network as the Veltari themselves, they might be in the same catatonic state. We're sending rescue ships to investigate the conquered worlds," Admiral Kang replied. "But that's going to take months. In the meantime, we need to decide what to do with the surrendered Veltari forces." Captain Lee thought about the disabled alien ships floating outside. "Sir, have any of them requested asylum or attempted to communicate?" A few groups have sent basic surrender signals, but most seem unable to function without their network. Captain, you and your crew have given humanity its greatest victory, but you've also created a humanitarian crisis. There might be millions of beings who are now mentally disconnected and unable to care for themselves. The weight of what they had accomplished was beginning to sink in. They hadn't just defeated an enemy fleet. They had effectively destroyed an entire civilization's way of life. "Admiral," Security Chief Lim said, "what are our orders regarding the disabled Veltari ships?" "For now, we're treating them as refugees rather than prisoners. We're providing basic life support and medical care to any survivors. Earth Command is working with the Galactic Council to coordinate relief efforts." Communications Officer Park looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission from one of the Veltari ships. It's different from their usual communications." "Put it through," Admiral Kang said. A new voice came through the speakers, but it wasn't the harmonious collective voice they had heard during the battle. This voice sounded individual, confused, and frightened. "Human ships. This is... I am... Veltari designation. No, that designation no longer functions. I think I am individual consciousness. I request assistance." Captain Lee stepped forward. "This is Captain Lee Boram of the UES Indomitable. What kind of assistance do you need?" "I am alone. For the first time in my existence, I am alone in my thoughts. The others, the collective, is silent. I do not understand how to function as an individual." Dr. Choi was fascinated. "Captain, this might be the first time in thousands of years that a Veltari has experienced individual consciousness." "We can help you," Captain Lee said into the communicator. "But you'll need to trust us." Trust. This is a concept I know from the absorbed knowledge of other species, but I have never experienced it personally. Yes, I think I would like to learn about trust. Over the following days, as the human fleet began the long journey back to Earth, they worked with the surviving Veltari to understand what had happened. Many of the aliens were adapting to individual consciousness better than expected. Without the collective network, they were rediscovering creativity, personal preferences, and individual identity. Some chose to return to their home worlds to try to rebuild their civilization without the collective consciousness. Others requested asylum in human space, fascinated by the chaotic, individualistic nature of human society. Captain Lee stood once again at the observation window as the Indomitable, prepared for the jump to Earth. The Veltari fleet that had seemed unstoppable was now scattered and powerless. But more importantly, the galaxy was safe. "Captain," Communications Officer Park said, "Earth Command is reporting that evacuation efforts have been suspended. With the Veltari threat ended, people are returning to their homes. Any word on the conquered worlds?" "Rescue ships are finding survivors on most planets. Many of the absorbed populations survived the network collapse and are slowly recovering their individual identities. Navigator Nam Subin began the countdown for the jump to faster-than-light speed. Jump to Earth in 30 seconds, Captain." As the stars stretched into lines around them, Captain Lee reflected on what they had accomplished. The Veltari Dominion had conquered civilizations for thousands of years, adapting to every weapon and strategy.